Now let's talk about flowcharts. So flowcharts are used a lot in logistics, and logistics is a really great thing to study, even if just briefly, because they have to deal with extremely complex systems. And one of the first exposures I had to this was watching some History Channel TV documentary where they showed you how UPS works during Christmas, and they're dealing with millions of packages every single day, and they have computers and people all working together to keep track of all this stuff. And it's just amazing to see how much they're handling. And then you zoom back into your own life, and kind of the simplistic or much more simple, smaller order of magnitude problems and challenges and things you're trying to organize, and it puts it in its place and makes it seem more manageable. So flowcharting is really valuable. It's also used a lot by software programmers and developers and UX developers, because they need to figure out how everything is going to work. They need to figure out the pathways. And a lot of learning is about, and strategizing is about pathways. It's not about using a radial format. If you have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 3 different major things that are all going to be happening at the same time, that's something that should be in a flowchart, not in a mind map, because a mind map is not designed for that type of knowledge. That flowcharting is really necessary for something that's process oriented. Mind mapping is for stuff that's just general knowledge and ideas that are connected to each other, but there's no clear sense of time passing and doing different things at different stages. If it's a very basic level, if it's a single process where it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can do that in an outline. You can do that in a mind map. But when it's multiple things happening at the same time and it's more complex systems, that's when you get into flowcharting territory. And it's really helpful because it makes things visual. It helps you understand complex systems. And a lot of our world today is run with complex systems. Your learning process, your learning workflow is a complex system. So it's going to be very difficult for you to understand how things are really working unless you can represent things visually in this way. So flowcharting is huge. And I think flowcharting over time is going to take the place, kind of take the crown away from mind mapping. And it's not getting as much attention as it deserves right now, but over time it's going to take the throne. Another important thing is it helps keeps things actionable. So flowcharting forces you to think about, what action am I going to take first, second, third, even how things mix together. There's also standard notation for flowcharts. So there's standard shapes and even colors, but mostly the shapes. There's standard shapes that you use for different parts of a process, and it's mostly designed around either programming or logistics. Like, okay, if we're a company, where's the factory, where does it get created, then it gets shipped here, and then there's a computer system and stuff like that. And you don't need to understand it all. You can get away with just using boxes and circles and triangles, and that's a great way to get started. And for probably the first 6 months or year or two that you're using it, you can get away with doing that in a lot of domains, a lot of professions and businesses. But over time, just know there's this actual visual language, standard notation that you can use. And it's great to eventually get to the point, if you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're not, is thinking about your business as a machine, thinking about the processes and even the job that you have as a machine, as something that's a system that you can break down into pieces and visualize the same way as Da Vinci was visualizing the machines that he was inventing and drawing out. Because when you can visualize it as a machine, you can start to pick it apart, use your spatial memory and your spatial processing, and use all of these metaphors and connections that your brain's able to make if you have things encoded in a visual, especially 3D spatial format. So that's really important, and that's one of the big steps that you'll make, is when you start breaking things down into systems and using a visual format to organize all that. Here's a few other pieces of software that are good to use. Google Drawings as well as Google Slides. So a lot of people don't know that Google Slides actually has all the same abilities as Google Drawings, but allows you to do multiple drawings in a single document. You can link to individual slides within that document. You can also have comments on individual objects inside that slide. So it's really powerful. You can change the shape of the slide, the size of it, to whatever you want. You can change it to an 8.5 by 11 standard portrait piece of paper. And I've created posters and helped people. I even have a Skillshare class on that about how to create a flat design poster inside Google Slides. And it's great because you can hand off, even if you're like me and you know how to use Photoshop and all these advanced pieces of software, it really sucks to have to transfer like a 50 megabyte file to somebody just so that you can create a simple poster. And people don't, you eventually hand it off to somebody who doesn't know how to use Photoshop and they just want to change the text and then they want you to do it. It's so much easier to just create things in Google Slides or Google Drawings and then have it there, and anybody can, even an idiot can go in there and just change the text, change the date or time or whatever, and not cause a ton of problems, or change the color, add a logo or add a face or switch something out and not cause a ton of problems. So it's really useful for that, and most people don't realize and aren't using it for that yet. SmartDraw is a great piece of software for flowcharting. So if you want to get into flowcharting, definitely check out SmartDraw. Visio is a Microsoft product. It's there. They've never done a great job marketing Visio, but it's actually a really powerful, really mature program. The design and just the usability isn't quite as good as SmartDraw, but Visio is also designed to be a lot more used for a lot more different purposes. And it's interesting to just try out Visio and SmartDraw, both of them, because they come with all these built-in templates, and you start to realize, wow, there's a ton of different uses of this whole idea of flowcharting and understanding systems that I would have never thought of before. And it's huge for getting clarity of thinking. That's one of the most difficult things. That's what separates the real experts from everybody else, the pretend experts and just the people that are journeymen and at middle stage or intermediate or beginner levels, is clarity of thought. And the only way to build clarity of thought quickly is to have explicitly set out in front of you in a visual format how a big complex system works, or how an industry, or how a business, or how whatever works, and understand all the connections and the different pieces of the puzzle. So you've got to have things organized in this way. Visio, SmartDraw, these other pieces of software are really great for doing that. And it's tough to do it any other way. And eventually things get too big to even fit on a piece of paper, draw out by hand. But drawing things out by hand is a great way to get started. Flying logic is the last one. This is if you want to go even deeper into understanding systems and getting into logic trees and other more complicated stuff. I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but if you want to go even deeper into systems and creating, thinking about things very systematically, then you're going to eventually want to get into flying logic, because it really trains your brain to think in a much more, you would think, well, I've been trained to think logically, I understand logic, but you don't really understand logic until you put it out in a visual format, and it changes how you think forever. It basically turns you into somebody who can handle much more complex thinking than is otherwise humanly possible, and you start to just be able to keep track of. It's like you're adding a ton of RAM to your computer. It's like you can just keep track of so many more things happening at the same time, and it's just no sweat off your brow. It's just a lot easier. So it's the closest thing, I would say. Systems thinking and being able to represent stuff in this way is the closest thing to just plugging in a ton of RAM into your computer and getting it to into your brain and getting it to run a lot faster, handle a lot more at the same time, because there's really just no other way to do it.